Go ahead, get us started. What's your name?
Hi, friends. I'm Kelly Moline. I'm a licensed pharmacist, functional medicine consultant, wife, and a new mom.
I am Landon Moline, husband to Kelly Moline, father of baby Danielle.
And not involved in the functional medicine world at all.
No, I'm just here to provide the fatherly perspective on things and ask the questions that everyone online is thinking.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the goal at least.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to talk about this week and what went on. Landon just got back from Arkansas on a boys' trip. How was
I
that?
did. It was fun. It was a great time. It's
Mm-hmm.
good to get away. It was harder to leave Danielle than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It wasn't necessarily guilt. It was just like I was gonna miss her so
Yeah.
much, and I mean because I've been on like paternity leave and stuff, I've been able to spend so much time with her and bond with her, and then like I haven't been away from her for more than 24 hours, so it was different, and so yeah, it was hard to kind of take my mind off her, and like it's easy when you're playing a game or something that distracts you, but on the times where it was just kind of chilling and stuff, that's kind of where your mind went back to the baby and like,
Yeah.
oh man, what's she doing right now? I wonder what if she's sleeping, eating, whatever. But yeah,
And I got to go on a bachelorette trip about a month ago. So she was 4 months then, and that was my first time leaving her. So we both experienced a few days without her. And so I wanted to see like what the difference was between your experience and my experience. And we can kind of
you mean
talk
like
about
staying
that.
home and not having like the significant other to help take care of her, or
No, well, we can go over that too.
yeah,
I was more thinking of like what your perspective was being away and how you felt about that. And because I think there is, at least what I hear from moms, like I hear a lot of, yeah, I would never leave my baby within the first 6 months. I would never leave my baby within the first year. And there were a lot of moms on my bachelorette trip, which I said to the bride, told me that she didn't really expect me to come and she thought I was going to back out. And I told her there's not a lot of people I would necessarily leave for, but this was my pharmacy group of friends. But it does feel sometimes like you're kind of being judged for that moment. But I did hear them say too that as moms, we need to fill our cup so that we can help our baby. Like you can't pour from an empty cup kind of thing. So to be the best mom, you sometimes get away and enjoy life. And yeah, leaving her for me was really hard. And I had the added aspect of, is she going to take a bottle? All of those things because we primarily breastfeed. And she does take a bottle when I go to work. But before that, it was kind of hit or miss. When I went back to work, she went on a bottle strike. So that was really hard. And I only work 1 day a week at the pharmacy, like out of the house. So that was, yeah, interesting of, is she going to take a bottle? I had full confidence in you being able to take care
thanks.
of her. But it was like the stress of, is she going to eat? How is she going to do? And when I go to work and she's bottle feeding, I think towards the end of the day, she starts being on a little bit more on a bottle strike because she knows that I'm going to come back eventually. And so she can just eat then. And then she would nurse on me for a long time. And so, like, the thought of her or thinking that I'm just going to be back at the end of the day and then me not coming back really made me feel guilty and really hurt me. And I would get sad thinking about that. So me leaving, my way of coping was just kind of trying not to think too much about it, too deeply into it. And I knew I was going to have a good time, which I did. And I didn't want to get too sad and like cry about it on the trip because I knew that this bachelorette weekend wasn't about me. I wanted to support the bride, and I fully made the decision to go and to be there, and I could have said no if I wanted to. So I wanted to make the most of it and support her in her weekend.
Yeah.
So when I left and you had to be solo parent, yeah, we can go into that. How did you feel being solo parent?
No, I mean, it was a challenge. I expected it to be tough. We had kind of tried to prep her with like bottle feeding, because I think that was our main concern, was would she take the bottle exclusively? And so I think the first day she might have held out a little bit at the end of the day to see if she get it from the source, so to speak. But for the most part, though, everything went really smoothly. I think it helps that she was already comfortable taking a bottle, and she's comfortable with me because I've been around a lot during my paternity leave. So that's kind of where I don't think we had any major issues. She's definitely particular about how she likes the bottle. She likes it at a certain temperature. If it's not the temperature she likes it at, she acts like you just gave her a pile of garbage. And she's like, what is this? But yeah, so I mean, once you get the right temperature, it's fine. But I think that was just the main challenge, was when you're bottle feeding, like when you're breastfeeding, you can just stick a boob in her mouth. But I think when you're bottle feeding, you have to prep the bottle, because we were getting it out of the freezer. So you have to make sure it's thawed out. And so there's this endless cycle of making sure the next bottle is ready to go for her. And because you don't want it sitting out too long, because then it'll go bad. So there's an endless cycle of like prepping the next bottle. And that next feeding time comes up faster than you think. And so it's I did get like a mobile bottle warmer and cooler, so I could maybe go somewhere with her and feed her out in public if needed. But it's just so much extra work to prep it that I was like, it's not worth the work of going out into public and having to like prepare all that stuff. And then you can only be out there for like 1 or 2 bottle feeds. And then she has to go down for naps too right now. So maybe when she gets a little older, it'll be a little easier to go out there and do that for a longer period of time. But at the time that you went, I just stayed home because that cycle was nonstop, whether you're putting her to bed or feeding her through the bottle. So it was a challenge, but I think everything went as smoothly as possible. She survived. I survived. And you got to enjoy a bachelorette party and be there for your friends. So yeah, I think it went well. It was just it was a lot of work. It increases my respect out there for single parents, because oh my goodness, that is a tough job to do by yourself for sure. Yeah. So props to single parents out there.
Yeah, for sure. Single parents, stay-at-home moms, I don't think I expected how much work goes into being like at home than I did after having her and seeing what it's like being with her all day. And it's great, and I love being able to spend that time with her, but it is a lot of work. You're in that constant cycle. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to go a little bit into my like airport tips when I was traveling without her, because I had a pump the whole time.
Okay.
And so when I was going, and I had to find a lactation room in the airport, which is available information, so that was really helpful. But I had to plan that as part of my like prepping before I go on the plane, and that's why you get there early partly too. But that was helpful. But it is such like, even when I'm going on a trip, my mind is always, on my pumping schedule. It's not necessarily like my feeding schedule and my nap schedule when I'm here, but I'm still on that pumping schedule. So I was pumping every 3 hours still, because that's how often she eats. And I was wondering, do I go every 3 hours throughout the 24 hours like we did when we were in the NICU? Or do I kind of go more on her feeding schedule now? So I try to more do her feeding schedule, so she's more on like a 7 to 7 schedule. So I didn't worry about it as much after 7 p.m. But after like we were staying up later than I normally do and having more liquids and stuff too. So I did have to pump at night at least once before bed because I was feeling more full than usual. But anyway, the airport, they have lactation rooms. And so I would find it and go in there. And then I also heard of bringing ice packs. So I brought my ice packs, brought the bottles to put the milk in. And then I brought all of my like pumping bags as well, the milk storage bags. And so I would go in there, and then I brought a gallon Ziploc baggie so that when I got through the security, I went to a bar and got that filled up with ice so that can keep my milk cold on the flight as well, because cold packs only stay cold for so long. So I think that was helpful that I learned of what you can do and ask for ice, and everyone was really accommodating with that. And so that my milk could stay cold. And then I've also heard that on the flight, my flight was only like 2.5 hours, but on the flight, if you wanted to, you can ask the flight attendants for fresh ice as well. So that if you're on a longer flight, that could help you, keep your milk cold. And then coming back, so I pumped the whole way there, and then my sister lives in Minnesota, so the trip was in Minnesota, so she actually picked up my milk, so that was helpful, so I didn't have to fly with it all home. Otherwise I would have brought like a bigger cooler to do that, but I believe if you want to fly with it and get it back through security, they just test it, which isn't a big deal.
And her sister took it because we have later trips to Minnesota for weddings and stuff this summer. So then we can use that when we're at the wedding. They can use it to bottle feed her later. Yes. So it just kind of worked out.
Yes. Yeah. So she has a lot of milk in her freezer. But yeah, that would be, I think, my only tip.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it all went smoothly.
Yes. Yep.
It's good.
Okay, so this week's episode is on postpartum depression. And so I really don't want to take this topic lightly because so many women do deal with it. And again, this is not medical advice. If you feel like you have postpartum depression or your partner has postpartum depression, definitely reach out for help. But these things I'm going to talk about kind of what to look out for, our experiences with it, and then more of that functional medicine lens has to do with the lifestyle things that you can do, supplements that you can take, and that could potentially reduce your risk of having postpartum depression, risk your severity of postpartum depression, just hopefully minimize it as we take on this postpartum time. So postpartum depression affects 1 in 7 moms, which is about 15%. And this is also, I believe, really underdiagnosed. I think a lot of people do deal with it. I know in my postpartum experience, I was not diagnosed with postpartum depression. So I also want to start this episode or this topic with that because just because I wasn't diagnosed with it doesn't mean I didn't have some sort of like struggles with it as well, but I'm coming at it and with more of a medical lens or healthcare provider lens and being through postpartum experience myself rather than necessarily my postpartum depression experience.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I think it's really underdiagnosed because in my experience, you are screened at that 6-week mark. And then as the mom, you don't really see anyone else besides that. And they do kind of do some screening, at least at my pediatrician office. We fill out paperwork for our pediatric visit for my baby. But the appointment isn't really about me, and I'm not positive if all offices do that. Maybe that is standard practice. But when I know when I'm filling out the paperwork, I'm not necessarily thinking about myself during that, and they might refer me if I did answer those questions differently. But yeah, postpartum depression can happen anytime between like anytime that first year postpartum. So it may not happen just within those first few weeks postpartum. And there are the baby blues that is pretty common, like the first 2 weeks of after giving birth. But if it lasts longer than the first 2 weeks, or if you really have struggle functioning, connecting with your baby, it's more severe, that's when I would reach out for help.
What are the baby blues?
After you give birth, you have this shift. You have the drop in hormones, and so you may experience this hormone change, possibly this sadness that you weren't expecting, this identity change, maybe as a new parent. And it's really hard. You're working on less sleep. Everything has changed within those first couple of weeks. So that is very common. And you may not have experienced the birth you wanted, the situation you wanted, so you're kind of grieving that. But if it lasts longer than those first 2 weeks, that's when you want to reach out for help. Or if it is very severe, even within those first 2 weeks. But you may not know you're going through it. So having your partner help identify that can also be really helpful.
Okay. So you're saying if like it lasts longer, it could be postpartum depression versus like there is a more common case of just being sad after giving birth based on like your hormone changes and just maybe not getting the birth that you wanted, or just because there's just a change and you were pregnant for so long and then now you're not. And so it's just a huge change in just your identity in general.
Yeah. And some people, not everyone probably experiences the baby blues, but I do think it's pretty common. If you feel like you're not connecting with the baby, if you struggle getting out of bed more than a physical standpoint, and you feel like you can't function, you can't connect, you don't feel that same happiness, you might feel numb, any of that severity, especially outside of the first couple weeks, can be related to postpartum depression. So those are some of the things to look out for. So things that can also increase your risk for postpartum depression. So if you have history of depression or anxiety, that basically can double your risk. So it increases your risk from about 15% to about 30%. And so I think knowing that if you've struggled with anxiety or depression before, that you may want to prepare a little bit more for that potential state, that time frame of postpartum. Also, if you've had trauma, if you had time in the NICU, had a difficult birth, you have lack of support, or if you have nutrient depletion. So we'll go into some of those things that we can adjust with our lifestyle, diet, or supplements we're taking so that we could reduce that risk too. So my experience, I was not diagnosed with postpartum depression, but I definitely had my struggles. I explained a little bit in our birth story that we did start in the NICU because she came at 35 weeks. And so I was grieving the fact that I didn't have the home birth as I planned. And we had an unexpected birth in the hospital. And the birth itself went well, but then she did end up in the NICU because she had trouble breathing. And she would have spells of just holding her breath. So that was scary. And then we didn't know how long we were going to be in the NICU. We ended up being in the NICU for 12 days, longest 12 days of our lives, I'd say. But there were a lot of times that I struggled during that time and I didn't feel adequate. And I think outside looking in, it all looks fine, and people always told me that this is just like the smallest little smudge in her life and that we'll get past this and we'll get to have like a good newborn experience still. And I wouldn't say they were wrong, but at that time it didn't feel that way. And there were definitely moments that I was very sad and was crying, and the NICU nurses were very sweet and tried to like kind of talk me down and told me that I was doing good and all of that. But I definitely didn't get that first postpartum, that first newborn experience that I was really looking forward to. I had this whole plan of having the 5-5-5 time, 5 days in the bed, 5 days on the bed, 5 days near the bed, to heal physically, to bond with my baby, all of that. And I didn't get that, and I was grieving that as well. And so it was really hard. It was really hard being in the NICU. I feel very fortunate of she doing so well in the NICU and only having the 12 days. And then we actually got to stay in her room for a few days, Thursday through Tuesday. So like 5 days we got to stay in her room because she had a private room, so we could work on breastfeeding and all of that. But we entered that room, and I remember thinking, oh no, if we're in this room too long, I'm going to enter depression, because it was a small room, a dark room, and we were not in the most uplifting circumstances. So that was really hard. And I did feel myself getting more withdrawn and kind of you wanting me to snap out of it. And it was definitely hard. And I feel like I was one day away from almost breaking when we were in the NICU. And I think it did improve when we got home. But I think we had different struggles being home and being then the sole caretakers. But yeah, I was not diagnosed with postpartum depression, but I definitely had those struggles. And then postpartum anxiety can also be paired with postpartum depression, or people may feel more anxious than depressed. And then there's also postpartum rage. And I just feel like I didn't necessarily have had rage. However, I feel like my fuse was a lot shorter, and my standard for what I wanted to tolerate was a lot shorter because I had this baby to take care of as well. But also I think my hormones kind of being everywhere and more depleted also had to play in it. But that was more my experience, especially the first couple weeks postpartum. And then when we were in the hospital at first, I didn't have as many supplements with me that I planned to continue because we were kind of in a rush getting to the hospital. But I think a week or so in, I was able to recontinue a lot of my supplements, and I think that did help. I also wanted to do the placenta encapsulation, so I started taking that almost 2 weeks out. I think like a week and a half out. Placenta encapsulation it's basically just dehydrating your placenta, cleaning it, steaming it, and then taking that in capsule form. But that can help replace a lot of those nutrients, those hormones that you just lost. So it's not so much as like your hormone crashing, but you're able to replenish some of that. So that can also help reduce the risk of postpartum depression. And I don't know if I had like a huge shift from taking that specifically, but I didn't have much to compare it to. But I don't feel like I had the postpartum depression, so it may have helped.
Yeah, I think when we were in the NICU, we definitely both got to like a breaking point by like the last day that we were in there. I feel like that we were just like, I knew if we were in there any longer, we were both going to just break. I mean, it was wearing you down. It was wearing me down. We weren't getting much sleep. And just, I mean, even the concern or stress of having, like, wondering if your baby was going to stop breathing in the night was extremely stressful. And I think, and I think the hospitalists were really good at like what they did and stuff, but you would get different opinions. Some would be more optimistic when they come talk to you, and some would be more pessimistic about how your baby was doing and when you're going to be able to get out of there. Because like everyone in the NICU just wants to get out of the NICU. It's like their main goal to leave with a healthy baby. But some would come in being like, you're going to be out of here in no time. And then the other ones would come and being like, oh, like once they pass these tests, but that can take time. It can take, a couple more weeks. And we're like, oh man, if we're in here for a couple more weeks, I don't know how we're going to survive, because you're just, it's very regulated what you can do. There's certain rules you have to follow just to handle your own baby. And you're like, it's my baby. Let me handle her how I want. But it's, there's even like, they kind of try to regulate like feeding times and stuff like that to make sure she's on a regular schedule. And so, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough environment to be in. But I'm glad we were there. So she got the care she needed, and everything worked out well. But, yeah.
So how did you feel like watching me go through that time where I was getting more and more withdrawn? I was crying. I was struggling. How did you feel watching that?
Yeah, it was, it was hard, because as the, I feel like a lot of times I want to fix things, but there wasn't a lot I could like physically or I couldn't do much to help you. I could just be there to support you, try to tell you everything's going to be okay and work through it, but you're kind of helpless because you're solely depending on the baby getting better to get out of there or to change the situation, and you can't control that. So that's just kind of where I was just trying to be there for you and, be like a shoulder to cry on and just be supportive, try to be as optimistic as I could be, get you food, make sure you're eating and sleeping when you should be. Cause, I had to remind you sometimes to eat or to sleep, cause you just didn't have as much of an appetite, or you didn't were staying up later than you should have been, and you need your sleep or else it's just going to make the situation worse. So, but yeah, just trying to make sure you had everything you needed. But yeah, and support you any way I could. But yeah, it was tough because I couldn't fix the problem. I just had to try to go through it with you and be as supportive as possible. So it's tough. It was just tough to watch you hurting and not getting, I could tell you were disappointed to not be getting the 555 and all that stuff. And so yeah, it was not a fun experience at all.
Yeah. Do you have any, to the dads out there, or to the other partners, do you have anything that you'd recommend based on your experience? I think it's just, you just got to have a lot of patience, and, there's not a lot I can say as far as advice. I would just say you're going through the trenches. You just got to try to support in any way you can. Whether that be with words or and sometimes it was about just me just being quiet and just sitting there with you and not saying anything, because words weren't helping and you were just getting frustrated with what I was saying. So I was just even sitting there with you, and just kind of being there as much as possible to be present. Don't I was also working at the time, so that was really tough to try to juggle that. Mm-hmm. But anytime I didn't have to be on my phone for work or on my computer, I was trying to just be present in the moment with you and not distant, because it would be really easy for me to shut off that part and just kind of be in my own world, because I was also not happy with the situation, and it was also a very depressing situation for me. But just being present, I think, is the best advice I can probably give. And I also really appreciated you being able to do so much, even though you were working at the time. You took over the responsibility of cleaning the pumps, because I was pumping around the clock, especially while we were trying to get the breastfeeding thing down, because that wasn't immediate for us. She was tube feeding for a long time, and then we had to learn how to feed. And being an early baby, she didn't quite have the muscles to be able to feed properly at first, and then just learning it all. So we were pumping at the same time. So that was really helpful, that when I was, getting up in the middle of the night and I would try to feed her, and then they had me pumping for 30 minutes afterwards, and then I was able to just like wake you up and ask you to clean the pumps, but that just took off 10 minutes of work that, and even if it's not quite 10 minutes, it's not a huge deal, but giving that task to you, or you wanting to do that task, really helped my mental capacity. And then I was able to get like that much more sleep, which was life-changing at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, it was just one of the few things I could actually physically do to help. So I was like happy to do it because you were at your like mental and physical capacity, and I wanted you to get as much sleep as possible because eventually you were going to be the sole source of food for her, and that was the goal. And so I wanted you as healthy as possible when that time came, because you just really don't know how long you're going to be in there and like what's going to come next. So
and we were really working to try to get my milk supply up, or at least I was mentally. I was really in my head about it, and so you need your stress levels down as much as possible, which like being in the NICU or being freshly postpartum can be really hard. And then your nutrition needs to be there, so you're helpful of making sure I ate, and we're focusing on like worming nutritious foods, anything that was available while living in a hospital. And then what else? Hydration, all of that.
Yeah, so I guess from the guy side, so what'd you call it? The dad paternal
postpartum depression. So that can affect, statistically it says 1 in 10 fathers, but I assume I don't know where they're getting these numbers, honestly, because I didn't know that was a thing. And so not knowing what to expect, I'm sure would be really hard for dads going into it, but then also moms not knowing and not expecting that either, because I think we all have heard of postpartum depression from the mom's perspective, but not knowing that the dad can also suffer from it can be challenging. And the factor that you're like, I'm expecting all of this help, and now the dad is disengaged or pulling away or throwing himself at work or not connecting with me, maybe not being as helpful, but it could be a sign of paternal postpartum depression. So we can kind of go into maybe why that happens for dads, and they're not getting screened. So that's another thing of, you don't have that 6-week checkup, even though we only pretty much have that 6-week checkup, you don't. And so you would pretty much have to go to your primary care at that point if you felt like you were struggling. And I'm sure a lot of dads want to kind of brush it off and not seek the help.
Yeah, because we're tough. No, I mean, honestly, it was a big surprise. I didn't think postpartum depression was a thing for guys. I didn't think paternal postpartum depression was actually a thing. I didn't know about it. And that's not being screened for. When you said it was 1 in 10 dads experience it, it's pretty shocking because it's just not talked about. I've never heard of it, but it does, like, after thinking about it, like, it does make sense. Like, obviously there's a lot more stress that comes with a newborn. So that's one major factor that can cause it. Stress with just the huge life change. Like, you're getting less sleep. You're getting less attention and affection from your wife, and that's sometimes that's how you feel connected to her, through the affection she shows you, but she's pouring that all into the baby at the time. So again, like, you could feel a little disconnected from your wife. But I think there's just a ton of things that that can really go into that. I don't know if I know all the different causes of it necessarily, but it makes a lot of sense, especially if you already deal with depression outside of that. Like, you can feel a little isolated, you can feel a little discombobulated from all the stuff going on.
I think isolation is a big part of it, and you're expecting this maybe for the mom, but then as the dad, you may not know that this is a thing. So you're not expecting to feel that way. And then also you're likely dealing with lack of sleep, especially if you're trying to be super supportive for the mom and helping maybe throughout the night, or even the dads that need to be functioning at work and the mom wants to take that on throughout the night. A lot of times you're still woken up from it, right? From the baby crying or the mom getting in and out of bed. So like lack of sleep. You may also have nutrient depletion from not eating enough just because you may be busy. And then
you could be so focused on the mom and making sure that she doesn't go through postpartum depression or trying to help her with the baby and stuff that you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah. And then that stress can also increase risk. You have an identity shift as well, especially if you're now a first-time father. So that can be a big one.
I mean, perhaps you had an idea of what you thought being a dad was going to be. You had this big expectation you're going to have this immediate bond with your kids, stuff like that, and you realize like maybe you don't have that feeling of that, like that bond or that special connection with your kid right away, because I talked about in a previous episode that can come in time. It might not be this huge thing you think it's going to be, so that can be a little bit depressing or just underwhelming. But I think all those things can feed, and I think not knowing that you could actually go through paternal postpartum depression can also allow it to kind of creep up on you and hit you without even realizing it. So I think that's kind of crazy that I didn't even know about it.
Did you go through your experience or no? I don't remember.
My experience with what?
About like paternal postpartum depression or anything like that.
And we're going through it right now. I mean, I guess I could just say like I've experienced, I didn't go through paternal postpartum depression, but I definitely did feel some of these symptoms, like some of these things. I feel like while your body was healing, stuff like that, like and you were pouring yourself into the kid, I think there was a little bit of this disconnection. We were very good at communicating, but like you're not showing the same amount of affection because like you're tired. You're taking is a 24-hour job taking care of a kid and stuff like that. So it is a big change. So while I don't think I really went through postpartum depression, I do think that I experienced some of the symptoms, and so I can definitely say like it's definitely real. Like I mean, it is some of those stressful things. Like I did experience those, and like luckily I didn't allow it to like completely affect me. I think it helped that I was still able to get a workout in here and there when I could. But a lot of times I wake up so tired, like I couldn't even will myself to go work out, stuff like that. So, but I think I was still good enough at like eating the right things and stuff that where I didn't, but I could definitely see it being a real problem if I didn't go through, like if I stopped eating correctly or, taking care of myself. I think it could have been a huge issue. I think it helped that I was on paternity leave, because if I wasn't, that would have been a lot of stress with like juggling work and stuff. I think that's probably why paternity leave exists, is to help with that. So if you have the availability to take that, if that's a benefit you have at your work, I would definitely suggest it, because it is a shift, and you might be so like trying to be so helpful for your wife that you do forget to take care of yourself. And but I definitely experienced less sleep and all that kind of stuff too. So
I have a friend who, this is how I learned about paternal postpartum depression. I was talking with a friend when I was pregnant, and she said her husband, she believes, went through a spectrum of that, because all of a sudden he was really withdrawn and he wasn't really communicating, and he didn't feel like he was bonding with the baby. He didn't really know what to do. And so she was, going through that postpartum time, and she felt like he wasn't helping as much as like he should have been. So she was like, kind of like, what the heck, snap out of it. I need you here. And then later realizing that was what he was going through, she expressed to me how she did feel bad about that. And if she would have known that previously, she thinks she would have maybe dealt with that a little bit different and had more empathy for that. And then maybe also getting more help for him because she didn't know what to expect with that.
Yeah. Nope. And I think, I mean, sometimes too, it's easy for guys to bottle up those emotions and not express like, oh, I think I'm going through something. Because we do want to, like, we don't want to be tough. We don't talk about our emotions a lot or anything like that. But like, I think it's okay to admit to yourself, like, I need some help. Like, I'm going through something here. I don't know what it is. I feel withdrawn. I feel, secluded or, isolated, and like, to express that and get the help you need, and or even like at least express it with your partner so they also know what you're going through. Because yeah, I think it probably affects. I mean, 1 in 10. That's a lot of people. I mean,
Yeah.
so like it makes sense though. I just don't think it's talked about enough.
Yeah, being through it now, it makes sense. But I do think there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes with it, especially when you are in it and you're like, this is the happiest time of my life, right? We prayed for this baby. We wanted this baby. And there's a lot of people that don't get to experience that. And after having our miscarriage and hearing people like sad or depressed or struggling with that postpartum time, it really hurts, like when you so badly want that pregnancy. And it really hurts, like hearing that and hearing people almost complain about it because you so badly wanted that and didn't get to experience it. And so like I felt so fortunate that we were able to have our baby and able to then go through that time, and it looked a little bit different than I thought because we were in the NICU. But like, I don't want to take away from, you feel so grateful for that, but yeah, it is still hard. And so like, I didn't want to necessarily complain about it because I was so grateful for it. So I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on that, and that it can be really normal, and it doesn't mean that you're not grateful for it and that you don't love your baby, but it can be a lot more other factors, whether that's like the hormonal shift and stuff. So I want to go over some root causes so we know why this is happening. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad mom or a bad dad because you're having these feelings. And then we can go over some like lifestyle and nutrition things so we can possibly reduce the severity, because there is a spectrum of postpartum depression. It's not just yes, you're depressed or no, you're not. Because like we expressed that just because we weren't diagnosed with it doesn't mean that we weren't experiencing a lot of the struggles that came with it and didn't have some sort of feelings of like sadness or whatever too. Okay. Mm-hmm. So some reasons why postpartum depression in the mom exists is because of those hormonal shifts I keep talking about. So we have a rapid decrease in estrogen and progesterone. That decrease happens because you just gave birth. Those levels are very high during your pregnancy, and then they drop off, which happens during the birth and after the birth. So estrogen can also support your serotonin, which is that like mood regulation hormone, your happy hormone. I think a lot of people have heard of serotonin. So less estrogen can mean less serotonin. And then progesterone, with that dropping as well, that's kind of your calming hormone. So having less progesterone can also mean increased risk of anxiety or insomnia. So those can be really common along with the happiness feelings, right? So those are the hormonal shifts that we're talking about. And then there's a depletion in neurotransmitters. So I'm talking dopamine, norepinephrine, and then again, the serotonin and serotonin. So to help support these neurotransmitters, we want protein, we want amino acids. So eating sufficient amount of protein. I think when we were postpartum, we also prepped a lot of food. And so we had a lot of food that we could stick in the crock pot. So we made sure we're still getting high protein meals, warming meals, to help support our bodies and to help my body when healing. And then B vitamins, magnesium, all of those we want to help support the neurotransmitters. And then another cause can be postpartum thyroiditis, which means inflammation of the thyroid, which I didn't really hear much about, or I haven't heard people really talk about this, so I don't know how much it's known. But if you've had thyroid issues, whether that is Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, I would definitely keep an eye out for postpartum thyroiditis. So that is basically another autoimmune disorder where your body is inflamed and attacking your thyroid, and then your body produces less thyroid hormone, which can have symptoms of depression, anxiety, just being like slower in general, brain fog, which I think goes with postpartum depression a lot. And so we can think, oh yeah, you have postpartum depression, that's very common, but they may not look at the thyroid. So I would encourage looking at the thyroid, because maybe you need support with the thyroid, whether that's reducing the thyroid antibodies, taking thyroid hormone, or just helping with different minerals to help that thyroid conversion in the body. And then lack of vitamin D and iron can also worsen the mood regulation and cause symptoms of postpartum depression. So those can be some causes.
It's a lot of causes.
So going over what to do to prepare, my highest recommendation would be, and based on our experience, would be to prepare as much as possible during the pregnancy, because if you start going down that pathway of the baby blues and then postpartum depression, and you're running at little to zero sleep and you have this newborn, it can be really hard to be like, okay, actually now I need to start focusing on myself during this time, and you don't really have the energy or the want to do that. So the more you can prepare beforehand and prepare maybe your partner of what to look out for and what we can do, I think can be really helpful. So a big thing was the nutrient depletion. So having omega-3s can lower inflammation and be really helpful for brain and mood. So we're looking at like EPA and DHA, and then in the omega-3s, so that could be like a quality fish oil or salmon, or there's walnuts. There's a lot of ways to get those omega-3s. And then methylated B vitamins, so the active form of B vitamins, magnesium, and again, magnesium glycinate or threonate, making sure it's a quality magnesium, iron if needed, if you're anemic, and that could be with food as well, red meats, leafy greens, that type of thing. Vitamin D supplementation, sometimes with vitamin D with K2, that can be really helpful. And then you could also do a vitamin D level through your PCP to see what that's at. I'd like that to be optimized between 60 and 80. So if it's lower than that, vitamin D supplementation can be really helpful. And then probiotics can be helpful for your gut and making sure we have good gut health, because good gut health can impact your neurotransmitters. About 90% of your serotonin is made in the gut. So probiotics can be helpful, and there are different probiotics that are more specific to mood regulation and different strains that are more specific to that. Choline can be really helpful. Choline can be found in foods like eggs, but also you can take a choline supplement. I've done that since about the 20-week mark in my pregnancy, and then I continue that postpartum. Adaptogens can be helpful for just like regulating that cortisol level and the stress, but I would definitely talk to your primary care, your physician or functional medicine person to figure out what adaptogens would be best for you, and especially if you're breastfeeding and all of that, because not all of them are safe in that time. Oh, and then lastly, postnatal or continuing a high quality prenatal. So that's going to have a lot of the vitamins and minerals you need to stay on board. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they should also be taking something postnatal after delivery, because I think we hear a lot about the prenatal side and making sure we have a good prenatal. And I hear a lot just from people asking me, do I still need to continue that? Because my doctor didn't tell me to. And so, yes, I would highly recommend continuing that, because that can be really helpful for your mood, for your energy levels, for your clear thinking, all of that too.
Yeah. And then you encapsulated, like you said before, the placenta.
Yeah.
So that helps with postpartum depression as well.
It can, yeah. And I think the studies are still a little bit muddy with the placenta encapsulation, and you want to find like a good company that's going to do it hygienically,
Yeah.
do it well. But yeah, it went fine for me. I'll decide with my next pregnancy if I want to do that again, but I think everything went fine for me in that. So I don't think it made anything worse in that.
Is there anything else lifestyle you wanted to add?
Yeah. So that was supplements. And supplements, nutrition. So it could come from supplements or come from diet or both. And then lifestyle, I think just resting when you can. So getting as much sleep for you as you can, and then getting out in the sun when you can too. When you're cleared, maybe exercising when you can, just maybe getting out of the house, and then eating good, nutritious foods. I was really conscious postpartum about the food I was putting into my body, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't eating high sugar or fried foods, because I didn't want that impacting my inflammation. I wanted to heal the best I could. I didn't want it impacting my mood, my thinking, any of that.
But yeah, I think resting, it sounds like duh, but I think resting is a big thing. I think that's part of the 5-5-5. It's getting you to rest so that your pelvic floor can rebuild and you don't have any other issues. But I think rest is a big one if you can. I mean, I think everyone's a little different. Some people are like I've heard people a couple days or even a day after they give birth, they're like, I was out cleaning whatever, and I'm like, wow, like you go. But there's also a part where but also not. Like your pelvic floor has to be rebuilt. I only know this because you've talked about it, but I think resting is important, and letting your body heal is important as much as you can early on. And so,
yeah, I think we live in a society that's so go, 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 and we reward people for always giving 110% and getting a lot done on your to-do list. But I think this is the time in your life where that is really not our goal, and we want to rest and recover and spend time in the slower moments and hanging out with our baby and getting to know them and starting our family as 3.
Exactly. Anything else?
My doula always talked about when she went to the NICU that was a really traumatic thing. And so she was like, wow, you handled that so well. Can you hear her, baby? She handled that so well. And a big thing that I was able to utilize was prayer and trusting God throughout our stay in the NICU. So I think that was really meaningful to me. And we had a lot of people praying for us. We had a lot of people praying throughout our pregnancy, especially with our scare at the beginning and a history of miscarriage. And then we had a lot of people praying once we were in the NICU. I was posting some on social media just to be able to share and have more prayer. And so I feel like I was able to put a lot of trust in the Lord with that. So I don't know how I would have made it without that. And so that was something I wanted to add in. And then additionally, finding mom friends, especially mom friends going through the same thing or similar experience or having babies around the same age, that drastically improved my postpartum experience, being able to go to the house, get coffee, especially once she got a little bit older. And then just share those experiences, whatever they may be. And that was really helpful for me. And then also listening to podcasts that are women or parents sharing similar experiences and sharing their experiences so I don't feel quite as alone in it. And I always tell people you become the people you surround yourself with. So being able to surround myself with friends that are moms that wanted like similar parenting styles or had similar parenting styles and had the same faith as me, or different levels, but had a faith like me. And then podcast too, I'm able to choose what kind of content I'm consuming, and having moms that are very uplifting and encouraging and make me feel like I'm not so alone in it, I think really helps with the isolation part. And that was a big reason that I wanted to start this podcast too, so that if there are other moms out there struggling during the early postpartum stages or any stage really, I wanted to help build that community of that mom community. So I wanted to add that in there.
Okay, so we can move on to Q&A then.
Yes. One other thing. I guess this is more of a disclaimer as well, but if you feel like you or your partner is dealing with this, please reach out to your PCP or someone that can help you. You don't have to deal with it alone. I think it's very normal that people deal with this, and there is more treatment to help, and there's no shame in taking medication for this, especially during this time of life. But my recommendations with like that functional medicine lens and the nutrients can help reduce the severity. Maybe you don't feel that. Maybe we can reduce the risk of postpartum depression, because I do feel like a lot of people do deal with it. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying don't take medications. I'm not trying to shame anyone for taking medications, especially during this really hard time in life.
Well put. Okay, so Q&A. We'll just do one today because I think we've gone on a little longer than normal. So, yeah. So this one came in. How much coffee is too much?
Okay, that is, I think, really personal too. So
I love my coffee, so I'm like, careful.
You're probably living off of coffee when we were in the NICU.
Oh yeah, for sure. This kind of feeds right into the postpartum, because I was relying heavily on coffee we're getting minimum sleep, so I had to have caffeine to stay awake, but so, I'm sure there's a limit to like how much you should have. Yeah,
and I think everyone's limit is a little bit different and what the recommendations are out there, but when I was pregnant, I decided to go off caffeine completely. And I know they recommend, like, as long as you stay under 200 or 300 milligrams, that's fine, of caffeine. But I decided I didn't feel comfortable with that. Especially we had a scare early in our pregnancy. So I just wanted to take out all risks. So I took out caffeine completely. And so postpartum, I was still off of caffeine. And looking back at it, I'm kind of surprised like I survived how I did. But there were reasons for me not to go back on caffeine. One, I was napping throughout the whole day, so I didn't want it to impact the little sleep I could get here and there. And then I didn't want it affecting my baby. I didn't want any caffeine coming through, like she already was fine not on caffeine, so I didn't want to have caffeine and that potentially impact how she was sleeping. And then I was so focused on my milk supply as well. I didn't want it to affect that, and I wanted to make sure I was super hydrated, getting all the nutrients I needed. So I didn't want to have coffee and caffeine dehydrate me more. And I was doing fine-ish without it, so I didn't want to have it. I don't think I started drinking coffee again until month 2 or 3 at postpartum.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, so I do have it now. I don't think I necessarily rely on it. I should probably have more days that are caffeine free. I don't think I really answered your question.
No.
I think it depends on the person. I think I'd probably recommend like 200 to 300 milligrams per day. I think other sources recommend you can go higher.
Is that like 2 cups of coffee or maybe 3?
It depends how strong the coffee is.
Yeah, I suppose.
And what kind of caffeine intake you're having with that coffee. But I think because pregnancy, they recommend 200 milligrams typically, I see. So that's like 2 weak cups of coffee or 1 strong cup of coffee. I also hear people saying, 4 to 5 cups of coffee I think is fine. However, that just seems like a lot to me. And I think us as a society, again, we're like, so go, go, go. So we're normalizing that a lot, and it's like a very cheap drug that is kind of out there and used and normalized. So no hate against it, but I think we kind of use it too much to stay awake and all these things, when I think we could take like a nutritional aspect or, getting that sleep we can.
Gotcha.
All of that.
Okay. Well, let's move on to dad joke of the day.
Yay.
The best part of the day.
Lighten up the mood a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a pretty serious topic today, so we'll kind of end on this. What do mermaids use to wash their fins?
What do they use to wash? Some sort of soap, scrub.
Tide.
Okay.
I feel like you could have gotten that one.
Yeah, I want to give it like a 3 or a 4.
Yeah.
Maybe even lower. I don't love it. But
okay, that's fine. That's okay. Actually, I got these new pens. Do you know that you can actually write underwater with them?
Oh yeah.
You can write other words too. That was a bonus dad joke. You don't get that? You can write underwater the words, but you can also write other words too.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that one went straight over your head.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was your dad jokes of the day.
Great job, Landon.
That's about the reaction I get most of the time. So. Well, thanks for listening.
Wait. Wait. Okay. Plug us. Where can you find us, Landon?
You can find us on our Instagram, Moline Method, at Moline Method, on our website, molinemethod.com. We're on all the podcasting networks. Leave us a 5-star review, share it with your friends, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
And then we have our little bye-bye kind of exit, and I wanted to share a little bit of what that was from.
Okay.
I'll try to be quick, but one of my coworkers, so she's from East Texas, her name is Christy, and so whenever she says bye, she's our customer service girl, so she says she's always talking to customers, and then when they leave, she's like bye bye, so because she has that thick East Texas accent, and so us as coworkers, we're always repeating it, and we're like, bye-bye now. And we just think it's fun. And so now when I'm like talking to other people, I catch myself being like, bye-bye. And so I thought it was cute, and we live in Texas, so we wanted to incorporate that a little bit.
Yeah. I think we noticed it a little, like the accent's a little more because we're not originally, you were born in Texas, but I'm not originally from Texas.
Yeah.
And we grew up north. So that's where I think we like think of it a lot more when people say it. But yeah. So that's our exit. So here we go, right? Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.